Hi everyone, welcome back into the studio. We're talking about correcting roses and stuff, and I just finished filming a couple of halftone lessons for my online class, my Mastering Roses class. And it got me thinking about, in correcting some of our roses, some of the things we did, some of the things that I've had to talk about with the challenge, the Rose Challenge, the 30-day Rose Challenge that's here on the channel, and some of the problems we got here. So I'm going to paint myself into a problem, show you what happens, what what some of you are doing. Okay, maybe 90% of you are doing, because I did it too. That's how I know to look for this stuff. I always say a good teacher has already made all the mistakes, so they know what to look for with their students. Someone who can just naturally grab it and do it isn't the kind of person that I really learned from, because I want to know what my problem is, and it's probably a problem that they have. And so I had a lot of these problems, and we worked through it, okay? And we can do it. We can do it. All right. So here's just a regular board. This is a hardboard, also known in the old days as masonite. But and then I just put down a light color, and I said, oh, no, I'm going to put some gray over it. So I made a gray I love the color raw umber, from raw umber and a little cerulean blue and white, and then put it over here and then sand it back through. That doesn't make a difference. We'll make a nice painting here, and we'll have a bit of fun with it, but just make a nice medium gray. You can see value-wise, it's down here about a 5, not quite as dark as a 4, not quite as light as a 6, so it's right down about a 5. And that value is important because we key that with our vision here when we're going to talk about halftones and what a halftone is. First, what I'm going to do is just take, I love burnt sienna. It's just the last couple of years, burnt sienna, boy, it seems like the second I add it into a painting, man, that painting sells really well. So I'm just going to streak a little bit. Some of you really like the contemporary looks that I do when I streak my colors, and I do too. So I'm going to streak a little bit more color. Then they sell. So really, they sell very, very well for me in the different markets and stuff. So I'll put some of the, and it's really nice contemporary looks. And like I say, I'll take a paper towel with a little bit of water and maybe soften and move the color around a bit, And like I said in the last couple of words, a couple of you agreed with me that, boy, that background's too pretty to cover up. You can make some really interesting, fun backgrounds, add some fun colors to it. Like this, like a real cool kind of a peach color would look fun in there. And peaches are made from quinacridone, yellow oxide, and white. We don't want to get this too light here. So I may have just added too much of it, but interject a nice cool color of the peach here would be kind of nice in that those nice customers that like those colors will pick that up now, and I can push that back in, soften it back down with any of my greens because those are complements. And I'll pull through a bit. That's kind of nice. Sad thing is some of that's going to cover up. When I get some of those colors in there, I really like it. So this is just my little $4 scraper. I went across to the Ace Hardware store across the street and got this one as well. And I want to clean that off because I have another video to film after this one for my online classes. Okay. So let's start doing a rose setup here, and let's start talking about what halftones are. And I'll paint it right into a mistake, and then we'll correct it, okay? So generally what I do, in good rose lessons, what I always tell my students in good rose lessons is you identify your background. Well, we're right here, maybe down to here with some of the darker colors we added. And then I always say, don't start a rose any lighter than 2 values up. So, somewhere right around a 6. Now, if you haven't found this value scale, if you want this value scale, go over to JansenArtStudio.com. JansenArtStudio.com. The links for what I do are always in the descriptions of the videos. But JansenArtStudio.com, you'll see all my videos over there. But on the you'll see up at the top menu, free videos. You click that, and then you'll go over there. You'll see my face. Right below there, you'll see the downloads for these value scales. And I have them in grays and blues and yellows and reds. They're there to help you as you watch some of these videos, okay? So go over to jansenartstudio.com and download those. So I want to make it, I'm going to have kind of a white rose with some red in it and stuff. Those always sell really well for me. And so I'm down in here, so I want to get my start right up around here. So right up around a 6 or so. So that's about almost a 7. Will dry down to a 6. So that's a good start. And you can see it already looks pretty light on this background. Well, it's a couple values lighter, okay? Now, a good rose is never, we all can paint different ones, but a good rose is never larger than your fist. So I don't want to get too much larger than my fist. Let's put another one, maybe turning right up. Oh, that one's going to turn that way. We'll turn one right here. Even as I'm showing you guys this stuff, I like to make a painting because this is how I make my living. So, you know, if I'm going to do a bunch of free videos, I have to paint like this. So I'm always thinking of it as making a painting. It's not always just practice. And sometimes if you do that, if you put a little bit of importance to it, it can do two things. One, it could really stress you out, or the other thing is it can make it actually go better because it puts more importance in it. And sometimes when we don't have importance to it, we just go here and we just say, oh, you know, it's like when I was practicing all the time. Oh, I'll just fix it with the next one. You don't want to do that. You want to think your way through it. All right. So if I'm at here at a 6 and I want to start making my soft centers, I go down to about a value 4. Now I want to put some yellow in this. So yellow oxide I know is about a value 4. So I'm going to put some yellow oxides in here. And we'll drop that down. It'll look a little bit lighter here for just a bit. And that'll be all right. We'll put a little yellow oxide over here. Notice my casual brushwork. And I'm going to go down to my quinacridone, which is a couple values darker. And I'll start that real small little center. Here we've done all this. You've seen all of this. The thing is, move small little movements, then get the movement a little larger. Drop in your bowl shadow. Soften it out a bit. But I'm not going to blend here. I'm not going to blend. So, and I'm going to actually soften all of this with halftones. We'll put some of these colors in here. We'll drop a bit of this color in here. And let me just tell you, this is drying super fast. It's already drying here super fast. Right now, it is 98 degrees outside. We have a humidity out there of about less than 20%. So everything is just drying immediately here in Nebraska right now. And we've had a week of into the 90s. So it's drying really fast. I don't worry about that because I'm going to paint this in tones, okay? I'm going to paint it in tones. And from our last video, we're going to use a lot of paint, right? We're going to use a lot of paint. But when you're a tone painter, when you're a halftone painter, like me, I don't care if the paint dries. It's actually easier if the paint dries, okay? Now, I do have a cap of extender out here that I can use, but, you know, we might not use it. Now, let's screw up this rose. Actually, first let's put a little more dark contrast so when we do screw it up it looks even worse. Okay, so I'll put some darker contrasting red violet into the center. I'll splash some of that down over here, maybe a bit over here. Red violet, value 2. This is about as dark as we can go in our nice and super ice cold. So we'll get some nice darks, dark here. Bad thing to do, to leave this much contrast like that. And let me tell you, I'll rinse that out because we're going to want to have some warm colors. Even worse thing to do is to come over here like this with some white and grab some white and start painting it, okay? Now, this is what happens to us. If we've gone too much to the white, we've got so much white here. White is one of the most dangerous colors an artist has on their palette because it's the most opaque. White optically is made from all colors together. Okay, and so it's reflecting all light. It gets into what's called additive and subtractive mixing. I won't go too far into that. Physics, which I spent 4 years in college studying, but it's reflecting light back up. So it's really dangerous, and because it is so opaque. And what happens is we jump to white too fast. Now, if you're following what I said before, we started out right down in here. We got to go up 2. This is the value of the color we should be using. But I'm jumping right up here and grabbing some, let's get it more pure, grabbing some white. So I'm up almost 3 more values than what I should be. And what happens is we put this on, and then we start working it around thinking, okay, I've got to blend this out. And we start blending this out and blending this out, and it all becomes one color. And that happens to just about everybody. And it happened to me for the longest time, because we're thinking, instead of working this ladder of values, this up and down the scale of values, we're grabbing a white and we're trying to move it out and blend it out. It doesn't do anything with you. So let me re-inject some of my shadow in here. And can we correct this? Absolutely. We're artists. We can correct this. I'm going to interject back into some of my mid-tones, my lower tones, back into here again. Get rid of some of that white. Just a bit of that. And I'll start, if I want to start softening something out, I'm a tone painter. I just look at what's going on between here and here. And I just interject a halftone in there to start softening it out. And I'll start pushing it around a little bit. And this is already dry out here. This is thick paint, so it's not dry. So I can just push into it a little bit here. Sometimes I like to push in and grab some of that red and pull it down like that. It gives a nice little edge to your rose sometimes like that. But how you should be doing it is grabbing some white, taking it back down, maybe to like around a value 7 or 8. This is an 8, so it'll dry down to a 7. That's a pretty good color. We can strike that on. You can see it's not quite as light. It's about what I have there. And we can start building some of this rose with this value here. So we've only gone up a couple of values, and we're going to put some of this value on this rose so we can start seeing some of this rose. I'm going to add a little extender. This isn't a blend. This is just so that I can slide the color on the surface a bit. So I want to slide this. I'll start building the shape of my petals here with the lower value. Here, the outside that I want to do here. If I have no bowl shadow there, I got to get some bowl shadow in there. I'm going to take a little yellow, a little red, a little bit of my red. So let's push a bit of that in there. Nice pretty color. I like that yellow oxide. A little warmth. This is the warm side and cool side of the rose. So I'll inject a little bit of that yellow and stuff in there. Okay. Now, let's take this a little darker as we come over here. Here's my shadow. I'm going to take this color right over here towards this shadow color, down a value or so. So my red violet's really a 2, and I'm right up in here. So I don't need to go completely to red violet, but I want to push some red violet into this so it's a little cooler, a little darker over here. Maybe push those colors together again just a bit there, and I'll have that. Now, because I was painting in there, you can see right up in there it's wet. See that? So, and I don't like that because that's hard when it gets super wet for a tone painter. So I'm going to go up here and work on some of these others. I know this is a good tone to soften up against my red violet because I just tried it. So I'm going to go through some of these things here, these areas, and add some of this intermediate tone. It's a tone right between here and here. It's what we call a halftone. It's right between my light and my super dark that I'm using, and I'll use it to soften just a few areas around here between my light and my dark on my roses so I can give them a nice look here. And if you notice, I paint really fast, and I do. And I paint really fast for a couple of reasons. One of them is so I don't play in it, because I'll play in it. I'll sit there and go do 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 and play in it, and then everything's the same. Okay? And then how do you fix it? You add more white, right? No, we don't do it that way. But do we do it that way? Yes. How do I know you do it that way? Because I did it for years, trying to break that habit. Okay? All right. So if I know I'm here, I got to go up to here. I don't want to go to pure white. I want to go right down in here someplace. But I'm going to screw it up for you again. I'm going to go right back to my pure white, and I'm going to strike pure white right in here. Now, that's too much. Can I leave it? Some parts of it, I might be able to leave it, but that's too much here. And there's a technique called shear where I could shear off the paint by pushing it with a little water. You saw me do that in several of the videos. I can do that. But I want to talk to you about halftone, because tones are what I usually paint in. So what I will do is I'll take my white. Now my petal is in here and it's here. So what I'm going to do is put a little strike of white here so it's easy for you to see. I'm right here. That's my rose. That's right there. That's right here to here. There. So what I'm going to do is come right over here, and I'll put a little warm yellow in it too, is I'm going to make a tone that's halfway between here, what you see here, what you see here. This one will be about halfway, and I can look at it next to the white and see that they're soft, and I'll push that right there. And then that makes it even easier for me to just push a little bit and soften those together, and all of a sudden I soften that white petal. Now I may want some more of that right up here, a little higher, so I can push against that white. And you can see I used a lot of white paint, so it's pushed up against that really hard, really high. And I can then pull white paint if I want down into it, because I have that intermediate tone right there to help soften that white. So what it did was I was in here, and what I did is put in a halftone, somewhere right halfway between the two. And that softens it out. Rather than blending that white down. See, if I did this, even with the assist of that halftone, if I did this, I would blend this all the way down. White doesn't stop. And white all becomes the same again. And that's what a lot of artists do, is they start to blend. And then they say, well, then my color's drying and I need longer time to blend. No, you don't. You need halftones. You're asking your colors to work too hard. Now I can take some of that off just because I know where my colors are, and I know sitting underneath there I have my halftone, and so I'll take some of that stuff off. And as long as I have that tone there, I can work a pretty flower. Okay, so I'll interject my yellow back in there again. I'm going to let that dry up a bit. I'm going to come back over here with some of that halftone. I'll put just a bit of extender into it. Let's work some of these pretty little flowers out here. And we'll go a little darker right out here. I really like to complete this one before I do that, but I've got so much paint on it right now. I'm going to move out to some of these others, watching my values, because I got to let that dry if I want to work on it. Otherwise, I'm just going to get a nice uncontrollable mess of color with that. So I'm going to put some of those tones on. Those are nice little shadow tones. Go between this light and that shadow. Hit it with a halftone to soften that tone off, and just push for a second, and you got a nice graduation of color. That's what we're doing. I'm going to put a nice little warmer, lighter yellow right up there. That's a pretty little rose color right there. Kind of a pretty little bud color for it. All kinds of different ways to do things. And I'll push, work this. Just put a little angle petal there. If I feel that that's too much, jumping too light to it, I'll just stroke a little bit more darker color in there. Never lose the bowl. That's the rule. Never lose the bowl. We'll come back here. Let's get a bit darker red, maybe a touch of green into it, which causes it to tone down a bit. And that's kind of pretty over there, like that. It makes kind of a pretty little rose sitting over there. You could spark it with other colors and everything, but I love painting and practicing these and doing different things and, trying different things, different edges and different colors. I work with it all the time, and that's getting almost there. Let's go work the other one here for a second. Change the color up a little bit more. Let's drop a touch more yellow into this one, so it's a little different coloring on a rose. Then we'll go a halftone up lighter, not to pure white, halftone up lighter so we can set some lighter petals in. And and I'm adding extender just to cause my colors to slide, because everything is so dry here. But I'm not blending with it here. So I'll push that on. Now, that's a bit light right there. to that. So I'll create a halftone. And before I start pushing it around, I'll interject the halftone so that my white will soften out the second I start to push it. If I don't, my white won't soften out. The white will travel. See, if I don't, the white will travel all the way there. And that's what happens is you need that halftone. You don't try to blend out white. You will lose every single time. Okay? Let me say that again. Don't try to blend out white. You will lose every single time. Give something to help stop the white, and that's a halftone. Okay? Because whites are very opaque and take over the painting really quickly. Okay? We saw that in some of the other videos I did using too much white and stuff. So, and it's nice. It's really nice to paint through like the 30 days like we did. This is exactly what I do with my students. Paint through the 30 days, do all of these lessons, find out where our trouble is, and then come back in and correct it and start painting a little better. Sometimes you go backwards a little bit, but eventually in the long run you get better. Let's head more of our red-violet, cooler color over here. Push that down to this side. Do I need a halftone right in there to soften? That's where I am. That's what this is. Maybe we'll put a little halftone right in between there to soften that. We could actually go a touch lighter up into the very front of that rose to make a pretty little rosebud there. Push that around a bit. It makes it kind of a pretty little rosebud. There, you can decide, do you want to do more? Do you want to put a little light? But let's go paint this one up. This is dry here now. So let's go back. Let's find what we need to do. We need to reset a bowl back here because we lost our bowl. We need to reset some contrast of the dark. So we'll push some red-violet right into that as well. Right in there. That's pretty good. I want to rinse that red-violet out because it's a dangerous color. Pinch wipe my brush off. Let's grab some of this yellow oxide, maybe a little Darulite with it here. So this is my same palette I use every time in all the videos. Here, let's push a little Darulite, a little more yellow into this one, this rose. Here we could add just maybe a mark or two of it right into that one. Maybe just a little hint of it into that one. Let's go up with our lights, not the pure white. Let's go back up to our lights. Let's push in here. Do I need a halftone there? That's where you have to decide the contrast. How much contrast do you want this rose to have? I want this rose to have a bit more contrast, so I'm going to let it stay. But I could soften it. I know how to do that. And I'm going to take a bit of extender because that will slide the colors across the surface here. Push that in. There. I'm not working in white. I'm working right here in Evaluate. I'm not working in white. It looks very light, but I'm working in Evaluate here. See? And I'm going to go down in value here as I come across to this side and start to add some petals or some looks of the petals right out over here. So it calms it down. And go on that in. And yes, I tell you that you can maybe hear the air conditioner. This building was built, it's a beautiful building that we have here in our studio. It's a 3-story building. It's one of the biggest buildings here in Sydney, and it was built in 1918. It didn't have air conditioners, so we have some different air conditioners in some of the different rooms. Some of the rooms have central air now, but some of the rooms don't, like this big studio here doesn't. And so you might hear that right now, but boy, it feels good because it is so hot here right now. It feels good. But it does dry out your paints because air conditioners pull the moisture out of the air, which dries your paints even faster. So there was a nice little halftone I put in there to soften right between the two of them there. Do you see that? So You know, and that's what I'll do. You know, if I want to create something back here, I look at the tone. If it's a back pedal edge, I look at the tone and against the background there. What do I want to do with that? I'm going to lighten up, warm up, a little more yellow, just a touch of that yellow. I love this tone right there. It's not quite a white. It's a real peachy kind of color coming from my violets and my white. Let's get a little bit lighter. Let's see what that looks like right up here in the front of the rose. As a reaching petal, that's kind of pretty. Now, do you want to soften that with a halftone? Or do you want to leave that? That's contrast. Now you have to start deciding how much you want to do. If I wanted a halftone, I'll slide right over here, a little darker maybe, and just push it right next to it, right there like that. And then I can push my white really easy, and it'll just 1 or 2 strokes, and it softens out, see? Let's pull in just a touch here. Change the direction of that. Maybe another slightly lighter one now. Because I'll come up by that, pull right down into the bowl, lift off the brush as you're coming right into the bowl, push it right into the bowl. I think I'm going to leave that because I'm going to go a little bit lighter up here in the very front. We'll build this one more time with the petal right down in there like that. Now, halftone. Right between those two, right back to this one. Sometimes I'll change that up, maybe a little bit more yellow, so it's not exactly the same. It's a little prettier tone. And I'll push that right into there. And if I want to soften again, let's go up to a halftone. Before blending that out, there's still quite a bit of difference between there and there. I'll go more to my violets and push one right in there. And now it just takes a little bit of movement, and I soften the rose. And I don't need to blend that, see? I don't need to blend that. Let's just pull down a bit here. We'll just leave some movement in the rose here. Almost up to white. Right? Almost up to white now. Into the very front edges of the rose here. Right in there like that. I want to come back over here. I'm going to slide this way to my darker tones. Let's go back and push just a bit more here. That's kind of pretty. We'll go down towards the shadow. Push the tone down towards the shadow here. Maybe a little, that's a big jump right there, so I'll come back in, right in here, the tone, right in between the two. I'm a tone painter. I love to paint in tones and color, and I don't blend. See, I'm just setting in the tones, and it looks like they're blended. It looks like you've got these beautiful transitions, but I really don't. Now, I may open up this rose again. Let me just show you. I did that in a couple of the 30-day lessons. I'm going to take some quinacridone and some red violet together and restate my center here, pulling out right into these other tones and kind of push them together there. But that's going to open up my rose a bit more. Drop the, and look at the interest that it gives. Let's put a bit of that darker contrast right in there. Do I want to soften it? Halftone. Halftone. Push a bit. There. That's kind of a pretty, maybe a bit of that. I love that dark light in next to that. See, it just kind of changes a nice little tone. Let's push in a lighter little edge right in here, so you can see it opened up my rose a bit by doing that. So, and I want to leave that just very lost over there like that. Maybe back towards the center color a bit. We can swirl around a bit, put some movement in there, and that makes kind of a pretty rose. Here, do you want any more contrast, any more light value contrast? White comes in finally here at the last. White, white, white. Some edges. So you can see I painted 9/10 of this rose without any, almost all of this rose really, without any white whatsoever. It makes a nice pretty little rose. Then we'll, let's go in and set some stems. Some movement for some stems here. Nice darker green. Here, colors. I like movement. Here, we'll set some of that. We'll set some dark green, red violet, and some burnt sienna to set a nice contrast. This is the negative painting if you want to negative paint anything, or soften any edges, increase contrast, do all that kind of stuff. All kinds of fun things you can do. You have, with the 30-day roses, I show you all different kinds of ways to do things. And you can always refer back to those videos to see different ways to do things. They're good techniques. Red violet in it cools it, darkens it, gives you more contrast. I like to move the contrast around real quick, and then I'll flip over and start walking up the scale to my lighter colors to add the final lighter colors that I want to add into a composition here. So maybe I want to, take some white and some green, some yellow, hit a bit of light, onto the edge of a stem. I don't do that too often, but I do like to do that sometimes. Light colors, especially if my background's a little darker. I like to hit some of that. Okay. And let's play a little bit of yellow greens and some burnt siennas and stuff. You can always make beautiful harmony to your leaves with some of your violets go in there, especially if you have a lot of violets. Look at that, how it tones that down, grays it down a bit, and that is just a beautiful green here, nice soft green to start out some of your leaf shapes. I'm going to add just a touch of extender so it slides over the surface, and we'll paint these just simple and whispery here. Maybe a bit more light, a bit more yellow here. Change the colors of your greens so they're not always the same, right? They're changing out here. Let's make a lighter yellow green. Maybe a bit of that violet in there just to harmonize that, soften it out, grade out just a bit here. A bit of my yellows. Let's see what that looks like right back. Coming back here like this, right in there. Take some of that edge off. Always drop down, change the color, change it slightly different on you so you can look at the reaction of your colors. Change the position a bit. There. That's kind of nice. Constantly mixing my greens, changing them just a bit, because I like my leaves to change. Sometimes I forget and I end up painting the whole thing with the same color green, but I do like green. We change the colors in a rose, we should be changing the colors in our leaves as well. So let's make this leaf a little more powerful. Let's add a bit of yellow. I like that Darulite. That really will change it up. See, it's a pretty color, and it picks up some of the yellow that's traveling in the roses as well. Here. Darken it down a little more pine green. Pine green, Darulite green. That's pretty. Put a little burnt sienna in it. Travel some of that around. Some of those colors around. Maybe even just some real light sienna kind of colors of the younger leaves of the rose, and this will pull the colors of those roses down here too, some of those yellows that are in there, down further down into the composition here. You can double tone some of your leaves too. Put a little bit of that yellowy tone right out there on the edges of them. Sometimes in quick paintings I don't do that, but it does look good to do that. Hit that other tone in there. Try. That's what I do, is I try, I work and I try different things. Just let your brush kind of dance around a bit, loosen up the composition with some stuff, okay? let's put some, there's something about vein lines that just adds so much. I'm going to add a lighter little vein line. Just, they're lines of movement, and I talk about this in all my design classes and stuff. And when do you add lines of movement and stuff in there? And there's something about those that just, and I watch just how much movement they have, and I'll tap them out if it's a little too much. Soften it out a bit. Come back here. So there, in about 30 minutes, we've painted and corrected our roses here. Let's add a bit more light right to that stem. A few little those Eugene Pettit, the little Pettit sparks that I like around the painting to just spark up the painting a little bit. So you got a beautiful, easy rose there. Not easy. It's not easy. I don't mean it to sound like that, because it does take a lot of practice. You have habits, guys. We all do. All of us as artists have habits. I was, a scroll painter, decorative painter, decorative artist for years. Got my master's in that, and it was so limiting, and it took me a long time to break those habits out. And it's just nothing but sitting down with hundreds of these boards and breaking those habits. That's all it is. And there's frustrating times, but I don't get frustrated. It's like I said in the last video, I embrace frustration. That means I'm doing something new. So, in frustration, when I hit the frustration point, it means I'm trying to do something new. You don't get frustrated if you're just repetitively painting the same that you always paint. Frustration is a good thing. Now, figure out what's causing the problem. Are you not using enough paint? Are you losing all of your shadow because you're using too much white? Okay? Do you need to soften this out with a halftone? Do you need to, soften out the look of your shadow? Do you need to restate your shadows? When I see a lot of people posting their photos, the first thing that I always notice is they've lost their shadows. That's a big one. They've lost their shadows because they put on white. And then what happens is you work that white on down. That white is so dangerous. And they work that white on down, starting to blend it. And white is so dangerous because it's so opaque, and you take everything out. And that's what happens. How much white is in this painting? Right there. You see it right there? Right there. 90% of this rose is not white. There's no white. Here, let me just take my brush of white here. Okay? Here's white. There's no white in this upper rose. There's no white in this lower rose. There's only white right there. And so it's controlling. It's controlling. Okay? Hope you enjoyed it. I have a lot more coming, because and it's great if you go over to our academies, guys, and you post your photo, and that just allows me to see what some of the problems are, and then I film things to help you, work through that. If you're using a different paint, there's not a lot I can do. I get a lot of people ask me, okay, which of these colors and stuff work? I don't know. I don't have a stock of every kind of acrylic that's out there. You're just going to have to try or use what I use, because it's impossible for me. I don't do that anymore. I paint with what I paint, and I show you how I do it. And I don't play with all the other different brands of acrylics anymore. I did in the first 20 years of my career when I built paint systems for paint companies, and I kept up on everything. I don't anymore. I paint all kinds of stuff. I like to have fun and paint, okay? So there's some things I can't help you with, all right? But get those questions, comment down there, and please subscribe to the channel. Just the little things, okay? Thanks a lot. I'll see you on the next one.